Picture this. It's the middle of the 19th century. Gas lamps are flickering on the platform, and you're about to board something brand new, a train that's going to travel right through the night. It's this thundering iron monster, and it's promising an experience no one's really had before, the feeling of sleep and motion, all blended together. But that romantic idea? Yeah, the reality was a whole different story. As this poor English gentleman wrote in his diary, trying to sleep on those first trains was basically just torture. The dream of progress came crashing into the brutal physical reality of iron hitting iron. And that really gets us to the big question here. How did we go from that, a spine-shattering nightmare, to the luxurious, even romantic idea of the sleeper car we have today? Well, it's a story of innovation that was born from absolute misery. To get why it was so awful, you have to understand that the first railways were never, ever designed for traveling at night. They were for short, daytime trips, a way to show off this incredible new speed. But then, the routes got longer, connecting cities that were hundreds of miles apart. And suddenly, passengers were stuck on these things long after sunset. So night travel wasn't a feature, it was just a miserable side effect. And the problem really boils down to basic physics. You see, this wasn't the gentle rocking of a carriage on a dirt road. No. This was the harsh, violent shock of pure iron wheels smashing against pure iron rails. There was no suspension. So every single bump, every joint in the track, sent a jolt right up through the wooden benches and straight into your skeleton. Sleep wasn't just hard, it was physically painful. But humans are resourceful, right? Out of all this suffering, a brand new culture started to pop up. Passengers, just out of sheer desperation, began inventing ways to just survive a night on the rails. People started showing up prepared. They'd bring these huge feather pillows from their own beds just to have some kind of cushioning. They'd bundle up in shawls for warmth and padding, and my personal favorite little hack, people would literally tie a strap around their head and hook it to the luggage rack above. Why? To stop their heads from doing that awful, violent bobbing every time they dozed off. I mean, can you imagine? It must have looked ridiculous, but hey, it worked. And it wasn't just about being uncomfortable. People were genuinely scared. Think about it. In the 19th century, sleep was something you did when you were still in a safe place behind a locked door. Now you had doctors seriously arguing about whether all those vibrations could actually damage your brain or give you some kind of nervous disorder. And it wasn't just paranoia. These were wooden cars lit with kerosene lamps. They were total fire traps. Falling asleep meant you had to trust you'd wake up before the train car caught fire. And of course, your personal level of suffering all depended on your ticket. If you're in third class, you got a bare wooden bench. People literally slept in a pile on the floor just to stay warm. Second class, okay, a tiny step up. You got a backrest, maybe a super thin cushion. But even in first class, with its fancy velvet seats, it was really just the best of a bad situation. Nobody was getting a good night's sleep. And just when you thought it couldn't possibly get any worse, winter would hit. The first train cars had zero heating, absolutely none. They were basically just wooden boxes full of cracks, flying through the freezing night air. Passengers weren't just chilly, people were getting frostbite. A train journey could become a legitimate fight for survival. So, what was the first big solution they came up with? Well, it was almost worse than the problem itself. They stuck a red-hot coal stove right in the middle of the wooden car. This basically created two different climate zones. If you were sitting next to the stove, you were sweating in the tropics, but if you were at either end of the car, you were still freezing in the Arctic. Oh, and of course you had sparks and burning embers constantly threatening to set the whole wooden train ablaze. Great solution, guys! But, slowly but surely, things did start to get better. You see these little baby steps here, reclining seats, some curtains for privacy. They even tried hanging hammocks, which was a total failure. But the really crucial date on this timeline, the one that changes everything, is 1854. That's the year a carpenter named George Pullman had one really, really bad night on a train. And this is where the whole story pivots. See, George Pullman wasn't some railroad tycoon. He was a craftsman. And after one terrible night trying to sleep on what was supposed to be a first-class train, he was just so disgusted, so fed up, that he decided, you know what, I can do better. So in 1865, he unveils his big idea. He calls it the Pioneer. And during the day, it looks like a very, very nice passenger car. You've got polished wood, plush velvet seats, nice lamps, pretty luxurious for the time, but still, a train car. But at night, oh, that's when the magic happened. An attendant, called a porter, would come through and completely transform the space. The seats would ingeniously fold together to make a lower bed, and then a second bed would fold down from the ceiling. All of a sudden, you had a two-story dormitory where there used to be just seats. For people who were used to wooden benches, this was pure genius. And what made this so radical wasn't just the lie-flat beds. It was the entire concept of service. Every single passenger got clean, white, starched sheets and a pillow. That was completely unheard of. You had heavy curtains for real privacy, and you had the porter, this dedicated staff member who was there just to take care of you. For the first time, a train trip started to feel like a stay in a nice hotel. So Pullman's idea was a huge hit in America. It just took off. But it also created this kind of fork in the road for train design, because over in Europe, they saw this American invention and thought, we can do that, but we're going to do it our way. And this led to two completely different ideas about what a night on a train should be. And you can really see those two philosophies right here. The American system was all about this open plan car. It was social, it was communal, with berths just separated by curtains. But the European system, it valued one thing above all else: privacy. They developed these private compartments with actual locked doors. It was about creating your own little sealed-off room, your fortress against the rest of the train. So all this competition, this innovation back and forth, it kicked off what we now call the golden age of train travel. The whole focus shifted. It wasn't about just surviving the night anymore. It was about creating rolling palaces on wheels, with each railroad trying to be more luxurious than the next. And the absolute peak of this whole era, the most famous example, of course, was the Orient Express. This thing wasn't just a way to get somewhere, it was the destination. It became this global symbol of luxury, mystery, and adventure. I mean, just listen to the level of luxury we're talking about here. Mahogany walls with mother-of-pearl inlays. Cabins that had both hot and cold running water. You had dining cars that were serving gourmet French food on fine china. It was an entire world away from that guy tying his head to the luggage rack. This was the final transformation, from pure torture to absolute decadence. But you know how it is with golden ages. They don't last forever. The whole idea of the train as this luxurious, rolling palace, an experience to be savored, it all started to fade away in the 20th century. Well, 2 world wars definitely beat up the industry, but the real game changers, the knockout punch, were the airplane and the automobile. Suddenly, everyone was obsessed with a new god: speed. Style didn't matter as much. Why spend days on a train, no matter how fancy, when you could just fly there in a few hours? The journey wasn't the point anymore. The destination was all that mattered. And that kind of brings us to today, doesn't it? Our modern high-speed trains are absolute marvels of engineering. They're fast, they're efficient, they've got Wi-Fi, power outlets. They are, objectively, a perfect way to get from point A to point B. But that feeling of an event, of a grand adventure, it's mostly gone. So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. We totally perfected the science of moving people. Today's journey is way faster and more comfortable than George Pullman could have ever dreamed of. But in that relentless race for efficiency, for just getting there faster, what did we lose? What part of the romance and the adventure of travel did we end up leaving behind at the station?